Okay, we are live. How you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Doing good. Doing good. Okay, so I'm fascinated by philosophy. I read as many books as I can on topics that involve philosophy. I have not been educated in any way on it. No college for philosophy. Um, so I am not too familiar with utilitarianism, but I've heard you talk about it. Um, Last week was the first time I've ever heard the word hedonism. And this morning, I'm preparing for our talk, was the first time I've heard of act utilitarianism versus rule utilitarianism. So a lot of these things that we might talk about are pretty new to me, but I'm pretty good at breaking down ideas, even if I don't really know the terms that go into it. So I guess the first thing I want to know from you is, do you think the standard ideas of utilitarianism should be put into law?
Well, it depends on what you mean by that. So utilitarianism is an ethical theory, not a legal one, but it has various implications for the law. So, for example, one implication that I think utilitarianism will have in regards to the law is that we should be spending much more money on foreign aid, assuming that that's effective. We shouldn't, lots of people seem to think uh, that we shouldn't really be doing much foreign aid. That the only things that the American government should do is the things that benefit Americans. And I think if you're a utilitarian, you would say no. What we care about is aggregate well-being. Said foreign aid helps people in other countries, and there do seem obviously to be various examples of foreign aid that help people in other countries. Then those are desirable. I think in addition, it'll have implications that we should probably ban factory farming, given that 80 billion animals are being tortured in the most reprehensible conditions imaginable. It'll have implications for foreign policy where we, value the lives more of people in other countries when it seems like the dominant attitude in the U.S. to foreign policy is basically just caring about U.S. interests and seeing people in other countries as pawns for the pursuit of U.S. interests. I think utilitarianism would condemn
Gotcha.
that. But it's not like there's a single law that we could pass that would enshrine utilitarianism into law.
Yeah.
It's an ethical theory that will say various things about what laws are desirable.
Okay. Well, let me pause you real quick to say, what if we focus on the idea of negative rights instead of negative and positive? So, when it comes to laws about what you're not allowed to do, do you think utilitarianism should fit in any form? Let's say just with negative rights towards humans.
Um, well, I would imagine that what utilitarianism would say about negative rights towards humans is that the ones that should be enshrined into law are the ones that will be most conducive to aggregate well-being. And then which ones will be most conducive to aggregate well-being? That'll just be an empirical question.
Okay. Well, so when we talk about examples like trolley car, do you save the five? Do you save the or yeah? Anyways, the trolley car problem. Is that always just referring to a hypothetical that nobody should act upon? Or do you think there are cases, if the numbers go high enough? Because I believe I've heard you say that it would be better for one to die than even two to die. So I guess we don't have to have the numbers go high. Do you think that should ever be in law that a police officer, while working on a hostage negotiation, if there's like 100 people held hostage and somebody says, I will murder all 100 of these if you don't kill this random person on the street. Do you think there's ever a reasonable society where the the government should execute this innocent person on the street to save 100?
I don't think so. I think that it seems like that would potentially increase the number of hostage negotiations in the future. And I think that, like a basic principle that I think works pretty well for uh, hostage situations is basically you don't negotiate with people taking hostages, otherwise they'll take more hostages. And I think that having it be enshrined into law that government figures, there are harsh legal consequences if they violate your rights, that has sufficiently good outcomes that even if that there are a small number of cases in which they would result in us losing out on saving a few extra lives, the benefits of the rules against that will be sufficiently desirable that they're not worth changing.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay, so because I'm trying to, when I was looking into act and rule utilitarianism, it seemed like act utilitarianism is what I think of as utilitarianism. The idea of the better for the more people. But rule utilitarianism sounded almost identical to deontology to me. What would you view as the difference between rule utilitarianism or like kind of what you just described, where any idea that we view as a negative rights utilitarian idea, like the trolley car problem, it seems like if you do the rule-based one or you do deontology, they're kind of the same.
Yeah, I mean, it might be the case that the rules that are prescribed by rule utilitarianism are going to be very similar, if not the same, as various deontological rules. I think that the difference is that in a scenario where following some rule that involves violating rights is permissible, or where it has good outcomes following that rule, the rule utilitarian would say you should do it, and the deontologist would say you shouldn't. So, for example, let's imagine that that every time you shot someone, that it would save two other people. So, so maybe, and so let's stipulate that this would make that it have good outcomes. Well, then the rule utilitarian would say, look, we should act on the rule, shoot people, sometimes so that it has good outcomes. And the deontologist would say, no, even if it has good outcomes to follow this rule, people have rights and the rights shouldn't be violated. And so as a result, they end up coming apart.
Okay, so I was thinking that rule utilitarianism would be more of how you describe like what laws would be. So you rule utilitarianism still fits into the idea of what one ought to do, and not necessarily what one society should make you do.
Right. Rule utilitarianism says that the way that you should act is you should act according to the rules whose universal adherence make things go best. And so if everybody following rules X, Y, and Z make things go best, then you should follow rules X, Y, and Z, even if violating rules X, Y, and Z in some particular circumstance will have good outcomes.
Gotcha. Okay, so when you say you're a utilitarian, you are referring to just what you think individuals ought to do, whether you're in the country you're in or if you were living out in nature. It's just what you think one ought to do. But I'm guessing you would recommend that that not only should the law not permit these ideas, like killing one to save two, but also that you would say even if one ought to do it morally, they shouldn't do it if they're living in a society where they would go to jail after doing it.
No, I mean, so it all depends on the details. I think that people should act in ways that make things go best. And so if if you killing one to save two would result in you going to jail, well, then the question would just be whether the harms of you going to jail outweigh the harms of the one extra life being saved. Now, just as a matter of fact, it turns out to be relatively easy for most people to save hundreds of lives over the course of their life. The cost to save a human life, if donated to effective charities, is only a few $1,000s. And so, if a person is a good utilitarian, then not going to jail is actually really important, given just how easy it is to save lots of people's lives. But if that weren't the case, and you had no other options to save people's lives, and you could your only option was to kill one to save two, and you'd be incarcerated. Yeah, maybe that would be worthwhile. I mean, there are second order effects. Like there are reasons not to do it. Based on the fact that it might not be successful, it would cause kind of, widespread societal terror. You should not trust yourself as an agent enough to be making the decision about when it's okay to kill people, given that usually turns out for the worse, etc. And so, I don't think that there are practical, real-world situations where people ought to, go around killing people to save multiple lives. But if we stipulate that if you did that, it would have good outcomes and it would have better outcomes than the other options on the table, then regardless of what your society says, then I think you ought to do that, even though what your society says may affect the desirability of the acts, but it doesn't have it affects the outcomes of the acts. But if the outcomes of the acts are good, you should take it regardless of what your society says.
Interesting. All right. can you imagine a case where you would do it in real life, even if you knew the outcome would be life in jail? Like if you killed an innocent person to save 100, and obviously it's hypothetical, but like just imagine somebody was crazy enough to make this happen where they were actually going to kill them. Somehow you could know these 100 were going to die. If you kill this one, the 100 are saved, but you killing that innocent person is caught on camera. You know you're going to go to jail for life. Would you do it just based out of goodness of making life better for
Well, I mean,
99 people?
I think in that case, it might be the second order effects are bad enough. Like if it's like if I mean, it seems like if people go around appeasing, like giving in to threats, that might have bad outcomes. So there might be a reason not to do it. And I also think, like, I don't know. I mean, if you donate about 10% of your income to effective charities, then you'll probably save 100 lives over the course of your lifetime. Um, so it's like, it's not even clear that this is on net saving me any lives. But if we tweak the hypothetical in more ways, such that we say, yeah, you get life in jail, but let's say it would be 1,000 or 10,000 people, then yeah, sure. I mean, I don't know what I would actually do as a matter of fact.
Well,
But
let's
in
say it's
terms,
100 people, but let's put it more in a vacuum where the person that's saying it, they're going to instantly be snapped out of existence. So they're not going to act upon the fact that they were able to convince you to do this bad thing. So it won't make them go on to do it with somebody else. And nobody will ever find out that they made you do this thing. They gave you this
yeah,
option.
okay.
So it won't convince other people to do this to other people either.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I don't know what I would do just as a matter of fact, but I think in that case, what you ought to do is, assuming, I couldn't donate the extra money to charity if I were incarcerated and so on and so forth. Yeah, I think what you ought to do is you ought to kill the person.
Okay. And the reason you might not would be it would be hard to be willing to let your entire life get ruined being put in jail. So let's say you weren't caught. Let's say it was a trade 10 for one person and you could do this thing and you would not get caught. Would you do it in real life? And I won't tell anybody.
Um, well, I don't know. I don't know what I would do just as a matter of contingent circumstance. But in terms of whether I think I ought to do it, if it's really the case that, by killing one person, you'll save 10 people and it will have no negative side effects, I think you ought to do it. I
Yeah,
don't know.
like so
I don't know. Like, I'm sort of squeamish. Like, I don't think I would actually kill anyone. But like, if it would on net save lives, then I think that that's what you ought to do.
Yeah. So, like, let's say it was closer to something like a trolley car situation, but let's say the act was more personal because it's skin on skin. You're snapping your fingers. If there's 10 people over here, one person over here, it's a real life scenario. You don't have to actually get bloody, but something is taking place in real life where these 10 people are going to be killed. Like, let's say they're tourists out in the jungle and they're going to get eaten by lions or something. So something that's kind of this like a natural act happening. And then there's just an innocent person just living their lives like normal, everything's fine, and some god type being comes down. And so in this hypothetical, you'll have to accept a god type being. But they just tell you if you snap your left fingers, then you're just claiming, let's just let nature take its course. These people went out and they're going to die. Or you snap your right side, and you snapping that makes that innocent human that's just out there watering their plants, doing nothing wrong. They're going to fall over dead, but the 10 people will not get eaten by lions. And nobody will ever know you did it. You don't go to jail. And you just made a choice that made the decision that of which person died.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, just, we're doing psychology here rather than morality, but I think in this case, I would probably do it. Like,
Oh,
I
man.
mean, just like as a fact about me, like, I think if I were like very connected to it, I might be too squeamish to do it, even if it were the right thing to do. But if it was just a matter of far away finger snapping, then I think I probably would be able to do it. And I think I certainly ought to do it.
Gotcha. See, I might be convinced otherwise, but I have this thought, like, I don't think anybody's owed anything. I don't believe in like natural rights. I don't think anybody is like owed any inventions that are going to save their lives, but it's great if it happens. If doctors invent things that's going to be a surgery that is going to save my life, that's awesome. But I, as a human, I don't have anything owed to me just existing. So I feel like as much as I can put myself in the shoes of the people that are going to be eaten by the lion, and I'd much rather not be eaten by the lion, I feel like as a human, I just have to accept that bad things might happen. And if bad things are happening intentionally by moral agents, then I can call that an immoral act. But if a thing happens, it happens, and I'm not owed anything, and it sucks that I'm going to die. But if somebody intentionally kills me, and I'm just watering my lawn, and they kill me to protect others, I just view it as so much more of an immoral act taking place. But I don't know. I could be wrong. Maybe it's just emotions getting in the way.
Yeah, well, I mean, so I think maybe you do have that intuition, but I think it might be the case that you're misdescribing it slightly. Like you seem to be describing it as it's like, it's bad if a person dies naturally, but it's especially bad if a person dies as a result of rights violations. And
Hmm.
that, I don't know, that doesn't seem to be what most people's intuitions are. What most people seem to intuit is that it's wrong to violate people's rights, but that doesn't affect the aggregate badness. So, like, if you die as a result of a heart attack versus as a result of someone poisoning you, like, how bad that isn't very different across the two cases, but it's just like, right, people have rights and it's wrong to violate them, even if it's not especially bad. Would you do
Mm.
you have the intuition that it's just like if we just consider two states of affairs and one of them two people die naturally, and then the other one one person kills another person, do you have the intuition that the one where the two which one do you think is worse intuitively?
I think the killing another person is worse.
Okay, so if you could prevent, and what if it's five killings?
Um, yeah, I think the unnecessarily causing any displeasure or death, I view as probably the most bad. I view that more bad than an equal amount of causing pleasure elsewhere. But yeah, if something
Okay,
if something naturally happens, I view that I just view that so differently. It's not for the person it's happening to necessarily. Like I don't want to die, but if I'm going to have a heart attack in 5 days versus if I'm going to be killed in 5 days, if in both cases I don't suffer, it's the same outcome for me, and I recognize that. Um, but in one case, no other moral agent did anything wrong, and in the other case, one did, and so I definitely see that as worse,
okay.
especially
Suppose
because we in a society now we have to do something about that moral agent that did something wrong.
Okay, so suppose that there are five bombs in a park. These bombs have all been deposited naturally. No person deposited them. They're just sort of like, they're just naturally forming bombs. And each of them are going
Okay.
to blow up one person. And you have two options. You can either stop the five bombs from killing five people, or if there's another person, a homicidal person, who's on his way to deliver a bomb to the park. And you can either stop the five bombs, or you can go up to him and talk him out of delivering the bomb to the park, such that, if you just defuse the bombs in the park, you'll save all five. And in the other case, you'll only save one. Which one do you think you should do?
Hmm.
Because I
Uh,
have the intuition, and I would imagine nearly everyone would share this intuition that you should defuse the five bombs. Um, and if you have that intuition, then I think like the reason for that is because it's worse for five people to die, and you should prevent
mhm.
worse things rather than better things, or rather than less things.
Yeah, no, I think I agree in a sense. Can I? It made me think of an analogy. Let me throw this out to you and see if you think this is comparable. But let's say a tsunami is going to hit a certain area in a certain amount of time, and therefore the law enforcement in that area is going to spend all their time and resources to try to get people out of the city, to try to put up barricades, something because they know this natural thing taking place might cause harm, and we want to prevent harm. Now, them doing this means they're putting less attention on their other cases. They could be looking for a missing person. They could be roaming the streets to see if anybody's mugging anybody. But because of preventing natural deaths, they might be neglecting some of their other duties. This makes sense to me, and I think it's similar to the bomb thing. I don't think it changes what is worse, but it means that there's nothing wrong obviously in my mind with the idea of humans trying to prevent natural disasters and natural occurring things. Um, But I do not think the trade-off, a direct trade-off where the answer would be fair, but if you know two outcomes are about to happen, yeah, I don't know. Anyways, I think in the case that you're describing, I might aim for the saving more people, because the way I view it different from like the trolley car problem is with the trolley car problem, you can just let nature take its course, or you have to choose to do the wrong thing. But if in this case there are two wrong things happening, and one is nature and one is not nature, I feel like if both outcomes are going to take place if you don't intervene, and then you're just picking, do I save more? I lean towards the saving more if the two outcomes are both happening. But maybe I misheard it. Are both
Yeah.
outcomes happening?
Yeah, both outcomes are happening and you can prevent one of them. So you can either stop the 5 bombs that are natural or the 1 bomb that was deposited by the person. Now, it seems like your view, what you've said before, is that the bombs are like the presence of the bombs are worse than the than or sorry the one person killing someone, that's worse than 5 natural deaths. And so if that's true, then it seems like you should prevent the worst thing rather than the better one.
It's not a
And so
worse
you should.
outcome. It's a worse action. It's morally worse in the sense
Okay.
of somebody committing a moral atrocity.
Yeah, okay, right. So, okay, yes, I think that that does describe our intuition. The intuition is that we sort of have rights, and it's wrong to violate these rights, such that it's morally worse to violate these rights, even if it produces a better outcome. Okay, now let's think of it. Now let's get into reasons why I think that intuition is indefensible. Um,
Okay.
well, so one argument is it's known as the paralysis argument. So the basic idea is this: um, every time you do anything, uh, you're having lots of effects on the world. So every time you, for example, drive to the store, you're affecting traffic patterns slightly. Now, affecting traffic patterns slightly will change when the people who are driving behind you have sex by a few seconds, which will change the identity of a future person. So, like, it turns out if people have sex like 3 seconds later, their child will be completely different. Now,
Mm-hmm.
this completely different child will do an enormous number of actions. Um, uh, some of the actions are going to be wrong. Some of them are going to be right. Uh, each of these actions are going to affect more things. And so the effects of your actions are going to ripple out throughout time, such that it's plausible that, 500 years from now, every single person on Earth will be completely different from who they would have been if you had not driven to the store. And so
Mm.
if you think that causing a rights violation is worse than preventing a rights violation, then you have to think that when you that when you just go about your ordinary life, that this is severely morally
Just to see
wrong.
if I fully am following this, when you say causing one is worse than preventing one, are you calling the natural, like say the natural bomb in your other hypothetical, that killing somebody, is that a rights violation? When you say preventing
Uh,
one?
well, in the natural case, no, that's not a rights violation.
Okay, I wasn't sure if I was supposed to picture the preventing a rights violation if you were
I mean,
referring to the natural one.
no, I mean, so here's
Okay.
it's like if you change the identity of every person, there will be like just tons of extra serial killers who will be born. They'll be born who will kill lots of people. They'll be born just because you drove to the store. Now, conversely, there will be tons of serial killers who won't be born. You have no idea which of those quantities is going to be greater.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of analogous to the following scenario called the dice of fortuna. So imagine you shake a box of dice that has some number of sides. You don't know how many sides it has, but um, if the dice turns up at an above average number of sides, like let's say it has 10 sides, if it turns up 11 or more, then you save a random person. If it's below average, then you kill a random person, and then if it's exactly in the middle, then you reroll.
Mm-hmm.
And each time you shake the box, you get $5. I assume you would think that it would be wrong to shake the dice. And so then the question is, how is this different from ordinary life? Just like walking to the store.
Yeah, would I want to do an action? I see. Well, let's see. Well, part of it is I see more problem with like I guess individually I see more problem with causing harm than stopping harm. So now I see what you meant earlier. But yeah, like, so I don't think anybody has owed me saving their lives, but I do think that it would be best to live in a way where we don't take anybody's life. So if rolling that dice is doing one of these two things, one is really bad and one I would call is undeserved. So I would personally call the rolling the dice a bad action, but I wouldn't call the fact that going to the store could lead to different humans being born. I wouldn't view that as a bad outcome. I just mostly view it as interesting.
Okay, well, so in both cases, you're causing some number of rights violations, and you're also preventing some number of rights violations. And in both cases, you're doing this for the sake of small personal benefits. In one case, you get $5, and in the other case, you go to the store. And so what you seem to suggest is that, okay, there's a difference between like preventing rights and like you shouldn't cause an extra rights violation even if it'll prevent one as well. And then the question is, okay, so how's that different from the dice of fortuna case? In both cases, your action, it's not being done with the intent of preventing or causing rights violations. There's some other intent. And in both cases, it's violating a bunch of rights and also preventing a bunch of rights violations. So what's the relevant difference between the two cases?
Well, maybe you're gonna have to help me understand the driving to the store one a little further, because I don't view it that way. I mean, I agree that driving to the store or how fast you drive, whatever, you affecting other people will affect the sex and outcome of humans that exist. But I don't think that just because you existing, even if you didn't do anything, if you just stood somewhere, somebody spending time to look at you instead of them walking to their car, their actions, because of you having no action, just existing, could also lead to this. I don't think different outcomes due to like what is it, like a butterfly effect, would mean that your actions caused it in any way that I would view as any kind of bad. If you made these serial killers exist instead of these ones, or even if you driving to the store somehow accidentally made more serial killers exist, I don't think any bad action happened, other than if you could look into the future and somehow know what your actions caused, you could attempt to not walk a certain way. But even then, if you knew that if you go to the store today, it will lead to 5 more serial killers existing, and if you don't, it won't. I don't even know if I would consider that immoral to go to the store, because, and maybe that's just a silly take on my part, but you going to the store is just you going to the store. If outcomes come from that, it's probably more noble not to. It's probably better to go, okay, I'm not going to go because I don't want these people to die. But I don't think the fact that some effect of how people drive behind you and how they have their kids, and therefore a different outcome, should ever affect somebody's choices.
Okay, but so, well, I'll just respond to your point about how you don't think that even if you knew what would happen, you should do anything about it. I mean, that seems obviously false. Like, I mean, it seems like if you know that as a result of you going to the store, multiple extra people will be brutally killed and dismembered, such that your action gives you a slight amount of benefit and causes vast amounts of harm to other people. Even if you don't think, it's a rights violation or anything like that, it seems like you shouldn't cause vast amounts of harm to other people for the sake of small benefits. But I'm still not seeing what the difference is between the two cases. You're just saying you don't think that it's true about in the Dice of Fortuna case, well, that it is a rights violation. Well, or sorry, it is true in the Dice of Fortuna case that it's a rights violation, but when you drive to the store, it's not true. And so the question is, what's the relevant difference between the two cases?
Yeah, well, really quickly to explain why I stated that I don't think it's a bad thing to still go to the store is because you can multiply the number, and it'll change the outcome of what you do. If I can't go anywhere and therefore I have to stand still, at some point I'm going to say, okay, I need to live my life even if I'm not going to be able to save everyone. It's kind of like the Peter Singer's thing about saving a child every 2 minutes while needing to get to the bank to get them to stop taking your money out of the bank. You can save a certain amount, but at some point you're going to have to stop. And this would be the same if, like, I lived out in nature and if I came across a person killing another person, I would probably kill the killer. But if I came across a parent killing their 1-year-old child because they can't feed it, I might save that 1-year-old child in the sense that I might not go to the store. But if that happened every single day and I had thousands of 1-year-old children I had to take care of, at some point I'm going to go, okay, I'm in nature. There's no laws here. I'm going to let this parent execute their child because they can't feed it. Because if I stop them and save that child, now I can't feed it. So I don't think...
Yeah, I mean, so if you think that morality can't be too demanding, then you might think, okay, if it only has, like, you know, maybe you'll be restricted from going to the store today, but you won't be restricted from going to the store tomorrow.
But it sounds like every time you go to the store, you're likely going to change something, and you can't know if that happenstance in the world is going to be a negative outcome because you're not doing a negative action.
Right. Yeah, I'm just saying, yeah, okay. I don't think that this is that relevant in the dispute. I think it's just like...
For sure.
I think that the consequentialist answer that just says, look, if you knew in advance that you would make the world a lot worse by going to the store, then you shouldn't go to the store. I think that's correct. And you seem to agree with that. You would just say that, okay, but if this meant that you could never do anything and had to stand still and starve to death, then that wouldn't apply. But
yeah, something like that.
Yeah, but so then what's the difference between the Dice of Fortuna case and ordinary action? I mean, so one difference that you seem to suggest was that, like, well, the Dice of Fortuna case, if we took it seriously, we could never act at all. And in the case of, in the ordinary action case, this would mean that we could never act. Well, in the Dice of Fortuna case, this would mean that, you know, you'd just be passing it up once. I think that there are a few ways to see that this answer is wrong. One of them is that I think, you know, even if you think, okay, like maybe there are some cases where it's okay, like maybe, you know, let's say that, you know, like if you didn't go to the store, you'd starve to death. Even if we think that going to the store is like analogous to rolling the Dice of Fortuna, in that case, given that the alternative is you starving to death, it's like maybe you get to roll the Dice of Fortuna in order to prevent yourself from starving to death. But it seems like you certainly, if you think that it's analogous to the Dice of Fortuna case, but then the only difference is just that in the Dice of Fortuna case, it only happens sometimes, while in the other case, it happens every time you take action. This would maybe exonerate taking a small number of really significant actions, but it certainly would not exonerate like just most of your ordinary actions. So like if you go to the store, you know, when it's not a complete necessity, well, then that's like, you know, let's say you go to the store to buy beer or something because, you know, beer tastes good. That doesn't seem morally wrong, but it seems like on your view, if the only difference is that taking the logic seriously would demand too much, then this would explain why in a small number of cases where the benefit is huge, you get to go to the store, but it doesn't explain why we just get to take, you know, banal, ordinary actions like going to the store and walking down the street.
Can you clarify real quick with the first one, with the driving and therefore things changing because driving does that? Are you stipulating that we do know the outcome and it's a worse outcome?
No, I'm talking about what happens actually in the real world, which is
okay.
That you go to the store, it affects a lot of things, but you have no idea what the net consequences of your actions are.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the thing. Like the idea that you can do an action where you are not causing any, you're not causing any current issue, but because everything leads to different things happening, each of your choices could have one of your choices or some of them could have a bad outcome. If you cannot know this, then it would not be any reason to make any of your choices. I can't imagine, I might be missing something, but I can't imagine, unless we give hypotheticals where if you turn left, it'll cause this. If you turn right, it causes this. But if you have no idea what it causes and you are not doing an action that is actually currently causing something immoral, it's just leading other people to be late and therefore they might speed and go through a red light in a car accident and so on and so forth. I just can't see any issue there. The rolling the dice, no matter what, unless you have to roll the dice again, which would lead to no matter what, you are either harming somebody with the dice or you are saving somebody from a harm that they aren't owed anything from you. I just view these cases as extremely different, and this could be an error in my part, though.
Well, no. So, I mean, in both cases, what you know is that you'll save some number of people. Well, in the dice case, that's actually the case that you're only saving, 50% chance you save one person, 50% chance you kill someone. Well, in the other case, it's that, like you'll probably save like millions of people, and you'll also cause the additional deaths of millions of people. But I mean, we can add that stipulation to the Dice of Fortuna case, and it doesn't seem to change our intuitions. Like, imagine every time you roll the dice, just like it would pick a random number between negative a million and a million, and if you got, let's say, negative 500,000, it would kill 500,000 people. If you got positive 500,000, it would save 500,000 people. And let's say these people are, a galaxy away to get rid of the problem of you kill all people on Earth maybe or something like that. And so, okay, so in this case, you have no idea what effects your actions have, just like in the ordinary actions case. In both cases.
Oh, so you're saying the step you take is like the dice you roll. Got it. Yes. Okay. I think I was missing that. Again, I don't know if I would roll a dice because it would just be this random thing happening. But if stepping is rolling of the dice, sure. Okay. Now that I kind of have more of an understanding.
Wait, sorry. It's not that stepping, that every time you take a step, it rolls the dice. The claim is that they're analogous. In that in the Dice of Fortuna case, like you're getting a small benefit. You're getting $5. And you're having this dramatic effect on the world that is, maybe killing lots of people, maybe saving lots of people. You have no idea, but it's having this huge effect. Mm-hmm. And this huge effect is neutral in expectation, but it's very unlikely that the actual effect. In a similar way, in the other case, in the non-Dice of Fortuna case, in the
driving to the store.
Yeah, in the driving to the store case, you're getting a small benefit, whatever benefit you get from driving to the store. You're save it by changing the identity of one person. That'll plausibly 100 years from now change the identity of every person on Earth. So you're going to cause a huge number of extra rights violations. You'll also prevent a huge number of extra rights violations. And so in both cases, you're having this just enormous effect that might be positive or negative. You're probably saving lots of extra people, probably killing lots of other extra people for the sake of small benefits. And so the claim is that these two are analogous. And so then the question is, okay, so what's the disanalogy between the two?
Yeah, I guess if I were to say anything, it would be just that actually physically rolling the dice, knowing that you are causing a direct outcome. It seems worse, but it might not be worse. Having these two things come out of it, where driving to the store and various different things you do, a certain amount would add up to essentially it's like rolling the dice, but it's over like a long-term effect.
No. It's not over a long-term effect. It's like if you drive for 5 minutes, the effect is that like it's not like over the course of 10 years you'll have one effect. No, it's like every time you drive for 5 minutes, you'll plausibly affect the future identity of every person.
That's what I meant. So like the 5 minutes is the 5 minute action, but the effect you have is a long-term effect, as in it'll affect in like a few hundred years, every single baby was changed based on your driving.
Wait, okay. So the idea is that the disanalogy is that the effect will happen far in the future?
No, I mean, that's just the thing that I'm seeing as the difference, not as it making it not analogous.
Yeah, I mean, so
Um,
there are obviously lots of differences between the two scenarios. The question is what the
mhm.
morally relevant difference is. That difference seems
Yeah.
obviously not morally relevant in that it seems like even if in the Dice of Fortuna case, the people would be killed or saved 100,000 years from now, or, let's say
Mhm.
100 years from now, that's a
Yeah,
big difference.
I guess the only thing that doesn't make it analogous is um, that the driving to the store is going to have an effect on everything, not just people being killed or people being saved. It's just like everything will have an effect on everything in the world. So if you were to roll a dice and you rolling that dice was just going to change all kinds of things, like how many times will this dog bark, or which breed of dog is going to be have more puppies, and yeah, all these different things in the world that could happen. Where if you talk about rolling this dice as just being a specific this outcome or this outcome, um, I I guess that gives a 50-50 shot where driving down the street might change everything. It will have an effect on which babies are born, but I don't know if it necessarily does it give a 50-50 shot at how many people will be killed versus saved. I'm just not sure if the math works that way, but if it does, I trust you. I guess I just need to look into it. This is a new topic to me for sure.
Well, well, I mean, so it does, right? Because it's like it affects the identity of lots of people, and so once you basically change the identity of everyone, you just have no idea what effect that has. You have no reason to think that the people will be worse or better on average after you do whatever you're doing. So it's as a result of that, um, you're driving to the store. Um, uh, yeah, you have no idea if it'll make people worse or better on average. And if it makes people better on average, it'll have a positive effect. If it makes people worse on average, it'll have a negative effect. And so as a result, I think it's neutral in expectation. Now, this thing that you seem to suggest is that, well, because it affects a lot of other things, it affects everything rather than just the number of people killed or saved, then that's what makes the difference. Yeah, but that doesn't seem right. Like it doesn't seem like, well, if only the Dice of Fortuna affected more other irrelevant things, like that are not morally significant, like how often dogs bark and such. It
Mm-hmm.
still seems wrong to roll the dice. If it's like you roll the dice and kills or saves 100,000 people or some vast number of people, um, and uh, then it also affects lots of other things about the world. It seems like the other things that it affects about the world that aren't morally significant are not relevant to the moral rightness of the act.
Mm.
But I don't know. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, this is just one argument, so we can move on to
yeah,
a different.
yeah. No, it's fine. I find it very interesting for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean,
yeah.
so one of the reason to think that there aren't rights of the type that you suggest. Um, well, let's see.
Well, I don't think there are
Uh,
any natural rights. I think that there are rights that would be best in the most desirable society that we could come up with to afford each other.
yeah, I mean, it seems like you don't think they're natural rights, but you do think that there's some morally significant doing allowing distinction, such that
Mm-hmm.
it's worse to cause a bad thing, even in the pursuit of preventing more bad things. Um,
Mm-hmm. Well, imagine this.
okay,
Imagine we're all in nature. We don't have a society at all. Let's say people are living in groups like chimpanzee type groups where humans are in groups of like 20 or 30 or whatever. And but there's no laws. So when people come across other people, they might rape them, they might steal their stuff, they might kill them. And then, in my mind, the best thing humans could do is a bunch of different tribes can get together and say, "Hey, let's call this area our land, and let's build a thing called a prison, and have laws to protect each other. Because each of us, our most important thing we want is to not die. If somebody's going to kill us." If we could come up with a law that would deter people from killing other people, this is probably the most important thing humans could do to feel safe. Because when you're out in nature, I'm guessing, I've never grown up in the wild being a wild human animal, but your biggest fear is death. And so, if even though maybe starting a new society, your society it won't be best or possible to afford positive rights, like where they give you all the food and drinks you need. But if you can get that yourself, your society will at least protect you from being killed. Like I believe that there are, when you think of every possible protection or right in that a government can afford a human in a society, if you were to rank them as the most important for anybody, I think it would all come down to, like, the top five would all be negative rights protections.
Yeah, well, I mean, so I agree there are rights in that sense, in that it's useful for the government to afford people legal rights and protections because they have good outcomes. But I don't think that what's legal is significant to what's moral. Like it's perfectly possible that it's good for the government to have laws against killing one to save two, and also that in a case where it won't have any negative side effects other than the killing the one, you ought to kill one to save two.
Sorry, say that one more time.
So it's perfectly possible that both it's wrong to kill one to save two, and that the government ought to have a law, or sorry, you should kill one to save two, assuming no other negative side effects.
Mm-hmm.
And also that the government should have a law making it illegal to kill one to save two.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with you in the sense of just the basic idea of, I would rather, if somebody said, would you rather one person die or two people die? I'd say, oh, one. I'd rather one. But then, yeah, also I agree with the government aspect too, because part of why I'd want to be in a society with this law where you don't kill me, the innocent person, to save two innocent people. Because part of why I want the society to begin with is protection. We all have this, like, we want to live on, whether it's for desires we have or if it's just like a natural instinct to want to live. It's at very least what most of us think we want the most. And so if I thought I lived in a society where people were going to act upon a moral idea of killing me for doing nothing wrong just to save two other people, or even to save 100 other people, I would shop around for a new society, I think.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, so I agree that you don't want a society where people are allowed to do that. But that's distinct from the question of whether you ought to do it. It could be the case that it's bad for society to tolerate X, even if X is what one ought to do.
Yeah. No, I got you. And yeah, so I guess, can you think of anything that we haven't talked about today to explain why one ought to do it? Because I don't think so. But then again, I base my actions of what I think I ought to do on what I would want done to me. And when I look at all the possible options, I feel like the one that I could declare as, if I had to pick from, if I were going to be killed, would I rather somebody kill an innocent person to save me and a group of people, versus if some group of people are going to be killed and I had to be killed to save them? If I could only choose one of those, not knowing what my future would hold, like where I would be at, like if I didn't know if I, like kind of like the Rawlsian idea, I didn't know if I'd be one of the group that was going to be naturally killed, we'll call it naturally killed, or I didn't know if I was going to be the one that a utilitarian thought they should kill to save the five. If I had to pick, it's so easy, just instant. Do not kill me if I'm an innocent person just to save five. But also, I mean, I also very badly, the next best thing I want is to not be one of the original five that are going to be hit by a trolley car. But the other one is so much more important to me if I didn't know who I would be.
Yeah, so, I mean, in terms of the veil of ignorance point, like, imagine that if you put everyone behind a veil of ignorance and you ask, what would be better for everyone in expectation? Well, it would be better for everyone to have you killing one person to save five. I mean, to illustrate this, let's just imagine that there are 6 people and you can kill one of them to save 5. Mm-hmm. Well, doing that makes it so that rather than having a 5/6 chance of death, they have a 1/6 chance of death. And it's better to have a 1/6 chance of death than a 5/6 chance of death. So it's better for everyone in expectation.
Yeah, I agree that it is better for the outcome of more individuals living, for sure. I mean, the math has to be that. I just don't think that is, I I just don't think that that is the right thing to do, and maybe there's just not a way to figure out why one thinks that way versus another way. Do you think it is the right answer, and the people that don't agree with it, do you just think they haven't thought it through well enough, or do you think that each of us have just different humans have different intuitions on this type of thing?
I think different people have different intuitions, but I think some intuitions are wrong and others are right. And I think my
Gotcha.
intuitions are right, and I think there are lots of arguments for it. But no, I mean, so you seem to, so like, it can actually just be shown that if you accept it, if you imagine putting everyone behind the veil of ignorance, and you ask, okay, suppose someone is better for every single person in expectation, then it's better overall. If we accept those two, that morality is what we would all approve of from behind the veil of ignorance, and if something is better, if it would be if it's better for everyone in expectation behind a veil of ignorance, then you can show that you should push the person in the trolley, just because it reduces everyone's risk of death.
But wouldn't that make everyone having less of a risk of death want police officers to be able to kill innocent people to save groups of 100?
Well, I know, because I think there are lots of sophisticated consequentialist reasons not to do it, right? Like, if I suspect that a world where police officers were allowed to kill people willy nilly as long as they had some half baked justification about how it was able to save multiple people would be a worse world. But if we stipulate away all of those negative like side effects and just make it so, okay, it's deciding between killing one to save five, it's perfectly trivial that everyone is better off in expectation from behind the veil of ignorance. And the reason that everyone is better off in expectation behind the veil of ignorance is that everybody's probability of death decreases because more people are saved than are killed.
Gotcha. Yeah, I guess I just kind of view it as I feel like I think everyone should have an opportunity, if that makes sense. Like so 95% of almost every animal species doesn't make it to adulthood because nature's tough. Nature's not good at all. So we could, knowing that most of that's due to starvation, go out and kill off 95% of baby species, to remove all that suffering that's going to happen, and just let the 5% that's left not really have any challenges, and just figure out. Let's imagine hypothetically that it's just going to play out where they're going to be perfectly fine. My intuition leads me to think that there is something wrong with not giving all of the 100% a fair opportunity to try it out. And this might just be emotionally speaking because I want my own opportunity, but I don't know what else to go off of. Where if I die, I might die, but I don't want to be wronged. I don't want somebody to wrong me to save others. But if I'm going to be one of the ones in a burning building that somebody could be sacrificed to save me and 99 other people, I had my shot and I lost it. So there's just something to that for me of removing somebody's opportunity just to save higher numbers. Just doesn't seem to hit for me, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, so I think in that case, like, I mean, if you think it's important that everyone gets the chance to survive to adulthood, well, then I think you should want more people to survive to adulthood. Um,
I want more people too. I just don't want anybody. I guess I just don't want anybody's rights to be violated.
yeah,
it-
well, but no, I mean, but then the question is, why is it the case that, like, I mean, if you die, you don't care about whether your like death was as a result of rights violation. It's not like, oh no, I got shot. Well, I really hope that the gun that shot me was by accident, so no one violated my rights. No, like what you care about is not dying. And so, look,
Mm.
I think that the utilitarians should say that, look, the things that matter to people that make their lives go better or worse, those are the things that matter. It's not, these abstract considerations about rights that don't affect people individually. Back to the point about the veil of ignorance. I mean, here's just one way to illustrate the intuition. Let's imagine
Mm.
you have, six people on a footbridge, or sorry, five. You have a footbridge. There are five people on the tracks below, one person on the track above, and you can push the person off the track above, off the bridge above, to stop a train from running over the five people. You're
Mm.
one of the people in the suitcase. So all the people are in suitcases. but you have no idea if you're on top of the bridge or on the bottom of the bridge next to the other suitcases. So you don't know, you have no idea where you are.
Hmm.
Well, you would want the person to push the guy on top of the bridge because that reduces your risk of death from 5-6 to 1-6. Well, that's just
Yeah.
like the veil of ignorance scenario. You don't know who you are, and so you just want things to go as well as possible because that's better for everyone in expectation.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I that is how I would do it, and it would just be like any other immoral act I would do for survival. If I was if I was on an island starving to death with other humans, I would easily kill a human and eat them to survive because I'm aware that when starvation sinks in, I'm going to have my instincts to try to survive. But I wouldn't think it would be right. I wouldn't have it be a law, and it's not just because any reason outside of that. I don't think anybody should have their rights violated. Now I don't know what the
Well,
outcome should be if I do something immoral to protect myself, but yeah.
okay, but I don't. I mean, yeah, maybe you would do it, but I don't think that would be immoral to push the person. And one way to see that this wouldn't be immoral is that all of the victims would want you to do it. Like every single person who's in the suitcase is like really hoping that you'll do it because it makes all of them better off in expectation. It makes all of them have all of the probability of them seeing their family go from 1-6 to 5-6. So now rather than being almost certain to die, they're almost certain to live. And it's like, okay, well, I don't think an action that makes people go from almost definite death to almost definite life is wrong. There are also other arguments for why um, uh, I mean, there are various other arguments for why you should push the person um, off the bridge. They do get a little bit complicated, but there are other arguments. But I think the basic intuition of look, every single person who's in the suitcase, if you could ask, they're all in expectation better off. They'd all
Hmm.
hope that you would do it because it makes it so that they're much less likely to die.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
and
I agree, and I think maybe immoral is not the right word, but I think it's very analogous to the idea of just being willing to kill somebody and eat them on an island because you're willing to do this thing because you know you're going to be one of the ones affected by it, and it doesn't mean it's right, but when it comes down to it, when you ignore all the luxuries and all the extra resources we happen to have at this moment where we happen to live, when it comes down to it, we're gonna fight for survival. We're gonna try to live. So yeah, if we're in these suitcases, that's gonna be our preference. I don't think that tells us what we ought to do. It just tells us what we are going to do.
wait. So sorry. So in the suitcase case, do you think that the person should push the guy in the suitcase?
There's 5 people in a suitcase going to get hit by a trolley, and somebody in a suitcase on a bridge is going to go to
Yeah,
stop the trolley.
and none of the people know whether they're in the top suitcase or bottom suitcase.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, if there's 5 people in suitcases that are going to die, and the one person in a suitcase that person can be killed to save the 5. No, no.
Okay, so even though every single one of them is like thinking, oh, I really hope that this guy pushes it, you nonetheless think they would be wrong to do it.
Yes, I think so. Yes, correct. Because the one person would be hoping that you push it that is going to die. That is only hoping because they're unaware of the situation. I don't think that's a
Okay,
good reason to kill somebody because they're unaware.
yeah, okay, so here's one modification and one argument for thinking you should push the person. Um,
Okay.
so let's imagine that there are 6 buttons. Okay, um, so sorry, there are two adjacent tracks. One of them has 5 suitcases full of people on the bottom, and one suitcase full of full of a person on top. Okay, so that's on one side, and the people's names are A, B, C, D, E, and F.
Okay.
That's what their parents named them.
I
And
like
then
that.
the other side has 5 suitcases and 1 suitcase on top of the bridge. And the suitcase on top of the bridge is filled with sand, as are all the suitcases on the bottom of the bridge filled with sand. Okay.
Okay.
And so, and in any case, if you push the suitcase on top of the bridge, it'll stop the other ones. Okay.
What's the name? Is the person on the bridge in the first scenario, is that G?
No, we don't know who's in each of them.
Okay. Okay, go on.
Okay. And so what the first button will do is it'll switch out person A with a random one of the suitcases full of sand, and then it'll knock the suitcase that's on top of the bridge on the sand side off the top of the bridge so that it'll stop the train on the other side. So now, person A previously was almost certainly going to get run over, that a 5/6 chance of getting run over. And now they have only, if you press that button, they'll only have a 1/6 chance of getting run over. The reason they'll only have a 1/6 chance of getting run over is that, there's a 5/6 chance that they'll be in one of the suitcases that's on the bottom, that they'll be switched out for one of the sand suitcases on the bottom. 1/6 chance that they'll be switched out for the suitcase on top.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're switched out for the one on top, then they'll die. But if they're switched out for any of the other 5, then they'll survive. Should you press the button?
And the button will make both suitcases, like the
button will switch out person A for a random one of the sand suitcases, and then on the side of the track that's full of sand, it'll knock the suitcase that's on top of the bridge.
I got that side figured out. So, but the other side is my button pressing and also affecting the person on top of the bridge, the suitcase on top of the bridge getting pushed over?
No.
Okay, so my button is only sending somebody that's in this 5 that's about to get hit, and nobody's pushing that one that's going to stop them.
Oh no, sorry, you don't know if they're about to get hit. There's a 5/6 chance that they're about to get hit, and 1/6 chance that they're already safe.
Oh, I see. So, okay, so I'm pressing the button to decide to send them over, but somebody else is deciding if they're going to drop the suitcase to save them.
No,
that's why it's a 5/6.
No.
Okay.
So no one else. There's no one else who's making any decisions. What your button does is it'll switch out person A for a random one of the suitcases full of sand. So they switch positions, and then right where person A went, on that side of the track that was previously full of sand and now has 5 suitcases full of sand and 1 suitcase with person A, the suitcase atop the bridge will fall down, and so it'll block the train.
I fully understand that side. What I do not understand is what is happening on the other side once I do that.
Nothing happens on the other side except the suitcase, except person A, just instead they're no longer there, and instead the suitcase of sand is there.
But I don't have to worry about that side dying at all? Like nobody's dying on that side?
No. Yes, people are dying on that side.
Okay.
Nothing else changes on that side. So on the other side, on the side that has all the people in it, right now, 5 people, there are 6 people. 5 of them are going to get run over by the trolley, and 1 of them is on top of the bridge, and so that person will be safe. And after you press the button, now there are 5. There are now instead of having A, B, C, D, E, and F on top of the bridge, or on the bridge on that side, now you have a thing of sand, and then you have B, C, D, E, and F, and you have no idea the positions of everyone.
Yeah, I would not send somebody over if I might be sending somebody that wouldn't have died to get hit.
Okay, so even though it reduces their risk of death from 5/6 to 1/6, so it reduces the odds of them dying by about 70% from certain death. And it'll affect no one else. So it's just better for them, better for them in expectation, worse for no one. You think you should do it?
Correct. I don't even think if they told me what they would want, I would feel like it was right to do.
Okay. Well, now, wait. Okay. So let's say someone has a terminal illness. There's an 85% chance that they'll die. You can give them a medication that will have a 15% chance of killing them. but if it doesn't kill them, then they'll definitely survive. Should you give them medication? And if I mean, presumably you should. This is how doctors operate. And so then the question
Right.
is, okay, how's that different from the case where you switch them out, where you reduce their risk of death from almost certainty to a low probability of death?
Gotcha. Well, I am in favor of assisted suicide. And so I'm in favor of choosing medications that could be beneficial but could have downsides. So there is that. So in that sense, if I truly felt they were of sound mind and they knew that this outcome that was not caused by me or anybody else, they knew that a train was coming and they had these odds and they wanted me to choose that. I guess if I knew they were of sound mind, sure. I guess I would go ahead and choose it.
Oh, no.
I would do it for their, yeah.
Sorry. Let's say you haven't asked them. You have no idea what they think. By the way, I will have to go in about 20 minutes.
Okay.
But
yep.
Yeah. So you have no idea what they think. Okay. But like you can't ask them. But all you know is that if you press the button, it'll reduce their risk of death from 5/6 to 1/6. This seems analogous to a case where you're a doctor, you can give someone a medicine that will make it so that rather than having an 85% chance of death, they'll have a 15% chance of death. Actually, it's not quite that. It's like
I just wouldn't.
Versus.
I wouldn't choose that for somebody. No.
Wait. Okay. So if a person comes into a hospital, and no, this person, they haven't said what they think either way. So it's not like they have asked you not to give the medication. You're giving the medication over their wishes. They came in unconscious. And you can give them a medication that will reduce their risk of death from 83.3 %, I think is the number, to 16.6 %. So from 5/6 to 1/6. Should you give them medicine that'll make them much less likely to die?
Yeah, I don't know. That's wild.
Well, I mean, I think like nearly every person is going to say you should give them the medicine. And I think basically all doctors would do it, right? Like it's like, I mean, just here's one way to see this. Imagine their family, and all their family is like, and you ask their family, "What do you want us to do?" And they're like, "Please do this." Rather than almost certainly dying, they will almost certainly, well, not almost certainly, but rather than being very likely to die, they will instead be very likely not to die. And then you're like, well, okay, but my morality says there's a doing lying distinction, such that even though this makes your family member much less likely to die, I nonetheless can't do it. That just seems obviously wrong. It seems obviously wrong to, like take an action that makes a person way more likely to die. For like that it's not like anyone else is affected. It just it makes it so that rather than almost definitely dying, they almost definitely survive.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really complicated, especially when they are in a coma or whatever situation where they can't decide for themselves. Because a lot of people, like if they find out they have cancer, they might want to try various different natural things and skip the chemotherapy because they don't want to take this risk where if they don't do it, they might have this 10% chance of living, or if they do the chemo, they might have a 90% chance of living or something. And some people wouldn't do it. They'd want to test whatever out. So I don't know. I really don't know exactly what the percentage should be. It obviously wouldn't be the case if it was 50-50. So making it 83 or 85%, like you were saying. Yeah, it makes it tough. We definitely... do you think that the number should be decided by the majority of what people would want if they were talking about what they want in advance, consciously?
Well,
like a do not resuscitate type of thing?
Well, I mean, I think what you should do is what will be best for them in expectation. And now maybe we think that allowing people to have greater medical autonomy will help with outcomes. So what we should want is like for people to generally be able to make the decision over what medical procedures happen regarding them.
Yeah, as far as protecting somebody from death of something caused by nature, something caused by an accident, something caused by a killer, I think I don't know. I view it completely different, but maybe I shouldn't. I'm definitely going to go back through this conversation and rethink this part through. It changes based off a handful of different things. I really think it matters if somebody is about to kill somebody, but you can like switch over to who's in which box versus if a tornado is going to wipe people out if you switch over to who's in which box. But maybe that's some bad intuition. I'll think it through. But since you do have to go soon, I wanted to ask you one more thing.
Wait,
I don't know
sorry,
if
can I just ask you
yeah,
one follow-up question just to make this
for sure.
complete? I mean, like, really think through the scenario. Like, you
Okay.
have a case where a person has cancer and they're almost definitely going to die, and you can give them a batch of chemotherapy. And if you give them a batch of chemotherapy, let's imagine this is such an efficient batch of chemotherapy, it'll have none of the traditional side effects of chemotherapy, and it'll just the only thing it'll do is make it so that rather than having a 5/6 chance of death, they'll instead have a 1/6 chance of death. It seems so obvious that like any doctor who's acting rightly would give them the chemotherapy. And so my claim is that it's very obvious you should do this, and it's obvious that this is analogous to pushing the button in the earlier case, where it just has no effect on anyone else, but just reduces someone's risk of death from 5/6 to 1/6. But okay, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, part of the difference might be that somebody is dying of an illness, like they are actually sick with a thing, versus they have odds if they're going to end up dead versus dying. That might be the difference. Clearly, there is some form of a large difference, which is why not only should it not be a legal practice, where with the medical one it is, but not only that, even legality aside, if somebody could get away with it, I am guessing there's a lot of people that wouldn't do it. But this could be based on bad intuition. But yeah, I will think it through. Okay, so the other thing I want to talk to you about, I don't know if this is popular amongst utilitarians or just the few I talk to, but there's this idea that creating more people is good. Creating more people that will have good lives is good. And I think this is based on, I don't want to call it a mathematical error, but it seems to be so clearly not true that I guess, anyways, if this is something you think, well, first of all, let me know if it's something you think, and then I'll give you a hypothetical to see
Yes,
if I understand it.
And I
Okay.
actually think, and I think it not only is it something that I think it's something that's just utterly trivial to prove. But okay, go ahead.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Yeah, and maybe you'll be able to. Okay, so I can't imagine somebody that's never existed getting to exist, no matter how good their lives are, mattering. Now, the only thing that I can imagine could affect something is if they affect other people's lives. But let's just say that we, on our planet, let's say there was a million islands, and you kind of control this planet, and you can just create two new people that are going to show up on each of these islands. I say two because we're social creatures, so we want to hang out with people and talk. Every island is full of food and full of pleasure. Everything is great. How on earth is there a better outcome? Let's say half the million islands have two people. What's going to be the benefit of one more island having two people, or the other 500,000 people that never existed that will not affect any other people? They're never going to leave the island. They can't make a boat. What am I missing?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, you describe that scenario as if it's puzzling, but that's good. That doesn't seem at all puzzling. In fact, it seems really obvious. You imagine these people who are like spending their entire lives, having a great time, reading philosophy, being super happy all the time. And then you're like, okay, is it good that these people exist? And they're like, yes, we're really happy that we exist. We enjoy every moment of our life. And they're like,
Well, you can't ask them.
How can that be? Okay, well, sure. Even if you can't ask them, it's like if every moment of their life is good, it seems like it's good that they exist. I mean, I think there are a lot of ways to see this. Here's one of them. Consider the following three states of affairs. Sorry, consider the following two states of affairs. In the state of affairs 1, you have people who live 50 years. They never suffer at all. Their lives are just perfectly good. And in state of affairs 2, you create no one. You think those two states of affairs are equal, correct?
Those two states of affair.
Like
Um,
just creating
I,
no one versus creating people with pretty happy lives who live for 50 years and then die.
I don't. My brain is telling me not to say equal, but I view not existing as meaning nothing. But yeah, go on.
So are they equal or is one better than the other?
Is one better than the, no, no, no. I do not think existing is ever better than not existing unless you already exist.
Okay, so are they equal? Is one better or are they neither better nor worse?
Um, Neither
Like are
better
they
nor worse. I
okay, well, I don't
let,
think you can have that. And there this is taking us slightly deep down the rabbit hole, but okay, well wait, so okay, consider the following two trades, okay?
okay.
So someone offers you a deal where you'll press a button and it'll make an existing person better off, and it'll create a new person who has a good life, um, or who has like a decent life. Should you press the button?
No, I could not imagine pressing a button to make a new person unless it was a desire of mine to create a person, and I would
Sorry,
hope that desire would only be
sorry.
to raise
Remember,
them.
the button. What the button does, it does two things. The first thing it does is create someone which you don't think is valuable, and then the second
Mm-hmm.
thing that it does is make an existing person better off.
Yeah, no,
Presumably, it's good to make. Wait, you don't think it's good to make existing people better off,
no,
or do you think?
it's great to make existing people better off. I'm not an antinatalist, but I view the idea of bringing one into existence as something that animals can do, including humans, and we will do this based on instinct or want, desire, whatever, and we do this, and if we do this action, then it happens. But the idea of me, someone that's not wanting to bring one into existence based off like the nature of wanting to create a child, making a person exist with the knowledge that they'll have a pretty good life means nothing to I don't think that's
Yeah.
reasonable to do, and so I don't think
Well,
because of an added
it'll
benefit.
it'll affect no one else. It's not like you'll be burdened with parenting them or anything. It's
Yeah.
just it'll make one person better off, and it will create this person. It seems like if benefiting a person is neither good nor bad, and making a person better off is good, then the action that does both of those things is good.
I mean, the only element I could imagine would be, so making somebody's life good is good. Bringing someone into existence means nothing because they never existed. So would it be worth doing this action? I think maybe. Let's go along with it. I don't know, but let's say maybe if the person I created to have a not net negative life, me creating them made somebody else have a better life. Okay, let's go with it. I can
Yeah,
see
okay,
that.
so that's worth doing. Let's say this person will live 50 years and will be happy for their entire life. And then you have another button that you can press. So now this person's definitely going to exist. And this other button
Okay.
that you can press, what it will do is it'll make the existing person, or the person who you're definitely going to create, rather than only living 50 years, it will make them live 100 years, live twice as long, be twice as happy, but it'll make it to the benefit to the existing person. It goes away. So should you press that second button?
If it'll make them happier or just live longer and therefore they're happier, twice as much happy is what you're saying?
Let's say they're twice as happy and they'll live twice as long. But it'll make it so that the slight benefit to the existing person goes away.
The other person that got the extra benefit for creating that
Yes.
person?
Like let's say the first button, it gives $50 to John, and then it also creates a person who has a good life and lives 50 years. Then the second benefit makes them twice as happy, live twice as long, but makes them
Yeah.
John no longer get $50.
Yeah. Um, I can answer it before adding the $50 in. I don't think I would remove somebody's pleasure to give somebody else extra pleasure.
Well, wait.
So no, I don't
So
think
just
so.
just just to be clear, it's not like you're like stealing from John. It's like the first button, it would have given $50 to John if nothing else happened. And then the second button, if someone comes along and says, "Hey, instead of giving $50 to John, you'll instead just double the well-being of the existing person."
Yeah, anything that would have been good enough to create another person would be so good that I would not want to remove that from the person.
Um, well, I think it would have been neither good nor bad, right? Because you think that creating someone is neither good nor bad. So
I'm okay with people creating people. I do not. Yes, correct. Neither good nor bad. I do not think it is good to create people.
right. So
Correct.
if something is neither good nor bad, like if it's not bad, and then it also like if let's say you create just a sand castle in space that no one cares about,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
that's neither good nor bad. And so it's like if you creating a sandcastle also makes one person's life better, then it's good because if you have something that's neither good nor bad and then you make it good, make it better, then that seems like that makes it good
Yeah,
overall.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, you're right. If so, similar to if I make this person that didn't exist, and that person was going to make another person happy, and they're going to spend their lives together, then yes, I could see this benefit happening for sure.
Right. And this would happen, I think, even if it's a small benefit, right? Like, it's not bad to make the person with a good life. And so
But my main question that I'm trying to understand is why would it be good to make somebody exist if that person existing cannot benefit another person, which is why I had the island scenario.
yeah, well, I think the reason it's good, well, I mean, so that I was giving an argument for why it is.
Oh,
Um,
okay, sorry. Yeah.
yeah, well, I mean, so I think that the reason is just it's good when people are happy and more good things are better. But okay, so if I do basically have to go now, but so let me just sort of very briefly state the argument. The argument is if pressing the button to create a person and benefit someone slightly, that seems worth doing. And then pressing another button that makes the new person who you'll create twice as well off, um, but will get rid of the existing benefit. That also seems worth doing because it's just like if you could prevent a future person from having some genetic defect that will make their life worse, even if it'll rob a current person of a slight benefit, it still seems like an improvement. And so these two actions are both worth taking. And then what do they do in combination? Well, the combination of them is just making a person with a good life. And so if that's worth doing, and so if both of them are worth doing, the combination of them is worth doing, and the combination of them just creates a person with a good life. Therefore, it's just worthwhile to create a person with a good life.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'll go over that. I'll think that over, and then yeah, thanks for talking. And if we end up chatting again, maybe I'll have thought it through, and
Yeah.
we'll nail that down further. I have like 10 different topics to talk to you about, like um, animal liberation type stuff. But obviously, we'll save that for a different time. But yeah,
All
thanks for
right.
talking, and have a good one.
Thank you. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye. All right, that was a cool talk. I didn't get a chance. I was focused on listening to all the details of his hypotheticals. I didn't get a chance to really look at the comments and go over them. Akash said, "What's the difference between act and rule? Consequentialism. I'm not sure if I understand. Um, I think the idea would be. Oh man, I saw this earlier and I thought I had an answer for it, but maybe I do not. So I guess the rule utilitarian idea would be if you have a general idea of what on average is likely to be the best for the most people, then this could be your general rule that you go by. Now, 9 times out of 10, this will be the best for most people. But maybe 1 time out of 10, you're following this idea that would normally, likely, on average, be the best for the most people. But one of these times, the outcome is worse. So you committed a non-utilitarian act, and but you followed the rule, the utilitarian rule. That's the basic idea. If I fully understood it as well. Cliff said, utility is not compatible with veganism and animal rights, as what you perceive as greater good may lead to violate the rights of someone else. Yeah, I mean, I think it works for humans, animals, whatever. Um, Yeah, no, it all comes down to that trolley problem. If a trolley's going at 5 cows or 5 humans, you can pull a lever and have it go over and hit one innocent human or one innocent cow. Do you do it? Do you save the higher numbers? And in my mind, I'm still not convinced. I am not convinced that you should go over and save the higher numbers. In that situation, in a situation where something is already set to be a certain way. Let's see. Isaac Garza said, but I think without the knowledge of the nature of these people I'm not sure you can justify objectively at all. Maybe, yes, I'd kill innocent people if for some reason we have knowledge that they'll become Hitler or Thanos, no matter what. Interesting. So you would be committing the Thanos act to end a Thanos. That's funny. But I mean, also, I mostly agree with you. I wouldn't kill one to save 5, but if it was going to be a Hitler, I would. But it would, yeah, we'd have to, this only works with hypothetical because we'd have to know the future and outcomes. And we'd have to look at it not as like a Minority Report thing where we're trusting this machine tells us, but straight up only in a hypothetical to test our limits. Jerem said, yeah, give the medicine. Yeah, that medicine thing's interesting. I think he made a really good point. The comparison was really good. I'm going to have to sit down and think that one through. The idea of juggling lives like that, where you have, in this scenario, you had 6 humans, and you could press a button that would make one human way less likely to die, like 85% less likely to die. Now they maybe wouldn't die if you don't do anything anyways. They might be perfectly fine, and then you doing the thing might make them die. So we'd got 0% death, 100% death. But the likelihood is it was something like they're already 85% likely to die, and you could change it to 15%. Do you change that? Now, if you can just change it in a sense of, can I change these odds? Sure, just looking at the numbers. But if you see the action you must do to change it, again, I don't know if it's emotions getting in the way, but it seems perfectly reasonable to me that I wouldn't risk somebody's life like that when they possibly were going to be perfectly fine. I don't know. And if I were to be asked about something more personal, like what if it was like a family member or whatever, that would be even more devastating because if they die, you made this likely. But even if I were to say that I'd want to change these odds for like a family member, that's because I would be making what I view as the morally wrong choice in desperation. So anyways, Lewis says more unhappy people is far worse than more happy people. Yes, definitely. With utilitarianism, usually the idea is make more people if you can know that they have a likelihood of having good lives. Which I don't think there's anything wrong with this. I think if people are going to make people, they should hopefully, or at least it's better off for the children and then them in the future as not children, if the parents doing this have a good amount of resources to give you a good life. So therefore, yes, it's good to have. It is good to have. Sorry, it's just spacing off. It's good to bring people into the world if they're likely going to have good lives. But as far as just a hypothetical of if there's an island and I can create 2 new random humans, I just create them, I snap them into existence. They're going to have the best life ever. Both of them are going to have great lives. They're just going to be on this island having every possible pleasure they can have. No kids, just a couple of people having the best conversations, no downside. They live to be 300 years old. They love every minute of it, and then they die in their sleep peacefully. these two people affected no other human, so there's that. And then the only thing that matters in any way is if once they existed, they wanted to exist. So of course, I want to exist. I'm already here. But before they existed, the idea of saying that this set of two people should magically exist, I can't think of any argument for it. And now the argument he was giving towards the end was a decent one in a sense, but it's almost not connected because that one was referring to making other people's lives better, where this wouldn't be affecting other people. But so anyways, it seemed like a very fascinating thing to look at, and I will definitely look at it. Jerem says more happy people is good. Yes. Yeah. It doesn't make sense. I really hope somebody can explain it to me. Maybe I'll get it eventually. Is more neutral people worse than more suffering plus pleasure people? It depends. You'd have to ask each individual. One thing that Jerem, I heard him say that I thought was a really cool thought was if you had this like a society or a planet full of people, and on this planet, everybody just had very neutral lives, no suffering, no pleasure, just like kind of baseline, boring nothingness. Would it be worth adding in paper cuts and also adding in a wild amount of pleasure? So you give some suffering, but then you give all this extra pleasure. Now, I think the answer is yes to that, but it also would come down to each individual. Some individuals might say the feelings we have in this neutral state are better than getting pleasure if you're going to make me possibly get some paper cuts. Now, I'm guessing most people would say no, like we'll take a little suffering and some pleasure. But I do think that's an interesting take. Isn't the basis for all goodness, goodness, beingness itself? What? So isn't our ground for being goodness, ground of being goodness, and we what? And we only make it badness by our subjective assertion and subsequent actions. Oh man, I don't know. I might just be tired, but I did not follow that. Sorry. I think that was my bad, but I'm going to continue. Does he think morality can exist in neutrality? No emotional preferences. No, I don't think so. So he's a utilitarian, so it would be somebody that wants the most pleasure possible for the most amount of people. If the pleasure of the creature was equal to the survival, to several humanities worth of pleasure, would we sacrifice ourselves for them? Yeah, no, that's an interesting thing. Early on in the conversation, he was saying that he would find it hard to sacrifice himself, but he might think it's what we ought to do. But I don't. I guess I do, and I don't. I don't know. If what we're calling what we ought to do, what causes the best outcome? Now, I would never say the best outcome for what could exist. If I ever get convinced of that, maybe. But as of now, of what currently does exist, if what's best would be to sacrifice one's life to have a overall better outcome, I could see that being a claim to make in the same sense that I would make a claim that if I kill a person on an island to eat them so I can survive, that I'd consider it immoral, but also justified. Some people can think of justified things as therefore not immoral anymore because it's not the wrong thing anymore. But I don't view it that way. So anyways. Jerem says Matthew's great. I agree that I really enjoyed talking to Matthew. That was a really good talk. I don't agree with all the stances, all the details of utilitarianism, but I like it. Still curious to hear your answer to my Fuji Apple question. Oh man, I want to answer that question, but I can't remember if I fully understood it. Contrarian 420, are you up for coming on to a live stream and talking? I don't know. I noticed that your profile image is not an image, so some people don't like to visually be on the internet, but you could come on here with just a blank screen and just audio if you want. But I do want to hear that one again. Okay, let's see. If the rule you followed brought you to this, of what use is the rule? That sounds really cool, but I don't know exactly what it's referring to. Isaac said if the trolley problem was 5 serial killers and 1 innocent person. Yeah, that's why usually the trolley car problem neutralizes that idea. It's just everybody's equal. You don't know the ages. It's just like, or if you knew the ages, everybody's the same. So they're all 20-year-olds and they're all 20-year-olds. They're all women. They're all whatever. You can't know any extra information. You can't know religion, all that kind of stuff. And that way it helps you decide what you think is right without having extra reasons to make it easy. It'd be easy to know something like a serial killer, which would mean they've already committed the acts. Then you know that you don't want to risk them committing more, and so on and so forth. So even though I am not for the death penalty, it'd be a rare case. Well, in that case, it would be to make it challenging. The trolley car would have to be going towards the 1 innocent person. And the question is, would I sacrifice the 5 serial killers to save the innocent person? And I'm not pro death penalty. I don't know if it should be within law that this could happen, but I personally would do this immoral act. Probably, especially if I was going to get away with it, pull the lever, especially if I knew the 5 had murdered people. I would just care so much more about that innocent person that I would want to do that, which is an interesting thing. There's very few things that I think I would do that would be against the law. Or against the law that I want. I don't want the law to say that you should kill the 5 serial killers to save the innocent person. Okay. Beingness itself is good. They have a good life. It is only when we when we fragment from the basic energetic beings that we begin to have less and less good in our lives. Maybe sometime. Yeah, cool. Yeah, if you ever want to, shoot me an email and we'll set up a talk. Okay. I'm going to hop off here, but yeah, that was a good talk. And everybody should tune in tomorrow, 8 a.m. PST. I know that's kind of early. Well, if you're in PST. But yeah, 8 a.m. PST, I'm going to be talking with Akash and Jeremy Gord. And we'll be talking about utilitarianism then too. So that'll be good. Maybe we can do a follow up on some of the topics in here. So I better get to thinking. All right. Take care, guys.